Okay, so now we've created our render texture target or icon. Now we want to create the associated material instance based off of that. So we're going to do another custom event. And this one's going to be called create new material instance. And since there's a couple things that are actually going to come off of this, I'm going to start with a sequence. Okay. So first off, just kind of like what we did in the just straight above us here, we want to create a naming for this new material. So I'm going to just copy the one from above, and instead of render target, I'm going to go material instance icon, so MII underscore, and we'll put it in the same folder. Okay, but we'll also create a new variable for that. So let's go material instance icon asset path, and that is a string. So now I can get this. Well, I'm going to actually set it. It's going to be the first thing we're going to do here. I'm going to set this. Maybe I'll just drag this just above it here. And we'll pull that in. Excuse the crossy lines. Like you could avoid it anyways. So that's the first thing. So now we've got a place to put it. One other thing that we're going to need, and I might as well add it now so I don't get confused. So that's the full path, including the file name. We'll also just want the file name itself. So I'm going to say MII asset name. And that we will also set right now. And probably should have set it first, but it doesn't matter. And that'll be this value here where we got the mesh name plus MII. So I'm going to come off of that pin and set that there. I'm going to do a little bit of cleanup to make that a little bit better. Okay, so that's our first step. Now I didn't check to see if this was valid at that point. Maybe we should do that. So before we set it, let's avoid a future error, and let's get our mesh again, and let's see if it's valid. Okay, we'll stuff that in here. And if it's valid, we'll set it. Okay. The next thing we want to do is it's just like before, where we check to see if it existed or not, and if it did, let's delete it. Because there's going to be a lot of times when you're going to set a certain viewpoint, or the lighting will be a certain way, and you'll finally get it into your icon, and you'll go, oh, that looks horrible. You'll want to come back and just retake that picture, if you will, and keeping all the names of it the same, because everything then would propagate into the rest of your document. So that's the reason why we want to just kind of overwrite, or get rid of and overwrite, because these are forced deletes. These will not be gentle. So first off, we need to do is a thing, and I don't know a lot about this, but I just know that this is how I got it. We want to get the asset tools. So these are the things that help us work on things that are in the content browser. And one thing, okay, so then with our asset path for our material instance, we'll get that. And now we're going to see if it exists. Does asset exist? I guess I could have done this first. Let's move this over here. I'll stray from my working notes here a little bit. So does it exist? And then we're going to branch. And if it does exist, we're going to delete it. So I'm going to get this guy again. And we're going to come up. We're going to delete the asset. And then just like before, we are going to create our new material instance again. Okay. If it doesn't exist, which is good because that means we get to actually fix it or do one, create one. So we're going to come off of here. If it doesn't exist, let's get to our asset tools. And from there, we want to duplicate an asset. So we're going to make a copy of one. And what we're going to make a copy of what we're going to, so this first of all, what are we going to call our duplicate? So we're going to call it this, our asset name. We're going to in the path, I'm just going to hard code this. Probably not a good idea, but I'm just going to grab it from here. I'll leave any other customizations up to you as you feel fit. This could be a variable you could set, and again, it would be set in the editor. It'd be all good stuff. The original object that we are going to duplicate, though, is our material instance of our post-process icon. So we're going to make copies of it and name it our new value. And once again, I'm going to promote this variable, and we're going to call it our generated material instance. Okay. So now we've got our material instance. We've got our render target that we created. We've got our material instance. Now the only thing that we need to do is in that material instance, if I just flip over there in our content here, in this material instance, we have this final color texture that needs to get this render target needs to be set there for it to do anything, right? Right? If you remember from our material, that's this texture here, or this parameter here, right? So let's do that. So again, in our blueprint, off of our, I guess what I got a little bit offset here. I'm going to grab step 2. Going to come into here. I'm going to grab all of this stuff. I'm going to grab all of this stuff and just move it down. I'm going to get rid of this link here. Okay. And then I'm going to add another pin here. And we're going to come off of that. And we want to be able to, we're going to try to, we're not going to try, we're going to do it. We're going to set that parameter in our generated material instance. So let's grab that generated material. And then we are going to, we have to cast it, unfortunately, but it's to a base component, so it's not an expensive cast. We're going to cast it to a material instance. Okay. Only reason why I know this is because of fighting through all of this, so it's not like I know all of these things instantly from the top of my head. And then now that we have a material instance, we need to get a material instance constant from it. So I need to cast that, because that's really what I wanted. Material instance constant. Okay. And then from that, I want to set my material instance texture parameter value. Material instance texture parameter value. Basically what I did was, as I tried to figure this out, was I wanted to set this. So I probably came here and I went, I unchecked context sensitive, and I came in here and I went material instance texture parameter value, and I wanted to set it. I said, well, what does it want? Right? And so they wanted a material instance constant. So I said, okay, how do I get one of those? You know, and so on and so forth. I knew I had this, and then that's how I ultimately found out what I had to do. So the parameter name, that's something that we need to know that we've set it. So in our material, we called it final color texture. Okay. So let's go back. Our parameter name is final color texture. Okay. I'm pretty sure it's case sensitive. And it has to be exact. The value that we want to set is our generated texture target. That's the value we want to set it to. So let's get that, right? Because that's the texture target that we created above, and that's what it's looking for. And that will set it. Okay. And then, now that we've set that, let's save our material instance. So let's grab our material instance, and we are going to save our loaded asset. I don't know why there's two of them in here, but I'll pick one. I don't want that one. I'll try again. Save loaded asset. I'll try the first one. That looks better. Well, it looks like the one I chose previously anyways. And then and we're done. Could that be it? So if I compile and save that, okay, and go into our world, let me just save this. And we're back here. So I found a number of little things, and let's fix those up, and we'll correct that error as well. First off, I'm going to start with the fact that this mesh, this button, is the only button here. I should have another button here to actually create the icon. So let's go fix that. So go into our blueprint. We're going to pick our create item icon event and set that to call an editor. Compile and save. If we go back into our world, we've got our icon. So that was the first thing. The next thing was we had this event here to create our new material instance, which was to follow at the end of this item creation. We never called it. So we're going to come off of here and, what was it? Create new material instance. So that'll now call that. So now that'll come to there. One other thing I want to change right now is while these paths that I've got here set work, and there's nothing wrong with them, but they're not, they kind of made another folder the same name as the project itself. So I just want to make it come into an icon folder, and it'll shorten our path up and it'll be a little bit cleaner here. So let's take these and shorten them up so that they're just within the standard content directory. I think there's another one somewhere. Game icons, change your target, material instance. Yeah, so I guess it's just the, no, yeah, I can do it. There's another one here. And we're going to duplicate out of that one as well. And, okay. Now the other error that we were getting at the bottom there where it said the target was null, etc. So if we go into our world, for the camera actor that we've added and the scene capture 2D object, it needed a texture target to define what it's supposed to be snapping. And so that was our RTT icon render target. And so that needed to be set. And the other item here was, since we were using this show only list, we need to find out, well, what did we want to show only? So we'll add an item into that array, and we're going to select our blueprint for that. Okay. We can save that. Now, one other thing I'd like to just fix was lighting on some of these things was pretty poor. And let's just move this directional light back to 0 so that it's in a spot. And we can just, adjust our view of the light and the shadows and what have you by adjusting the angles here. And we can also adjust our intensity of our light. So depending on how bright or that you want your icons to show up as, we can set that there. So let's see. Let's go back into our content browser here. Let's just save this. And I'm going to get rid of these. And I'll leave this little directory structure here for now. What I want to make sure is our stuff actually shows up into this subfolder here, which it should. So let's give that one, let's give it a shot now. Yeah, let's go into our world. Let's look at through our camera actor's eyes. And let's call that our proposed icon. Let's select our blueprint. The mesh is loaded. And now let's create. Okay, I didn't see any messages pop up. If we go into our content browser in our new icon folder, or the folder we originally created, and now we've got our material instance and our render texture icon that it uses. And if I go into this, this is where you can see that it's really a mask. It masked out the object from using the alpha channel. And there's our object. And again, we're zoomed in quite closely. That's why it looks a little bit jigger-jaggedy. But at its level that you're probably going to be using it, it'll be as good as it's going to be. Which is pretty good for a 128, and if you're down at a 64, it's going to be a really sharp little icon. And obviously you can dress up the back because it'll be a transparent background when we put it into our image, just as it's kind of shown in the preview there. Okay, so that's the changes that I wanted to make to get rid of that error. Now there's a couple of other things here that we need to clean up. Okay, let's continue with cleaning up this blueprint. One thing that I would like to start with is that I've done a really, I guess I just wasn't aware of what I did here. When we were first creating the item icon, right, that custom event, and we went through and we checked if the file existed. And then I branched off of that, and if it did exist, we deleted it. And then I just called this same procedure, same custom event again. And that basically worked because I'd removed this. When I called it again, it came down through the faults and it went on. But what it also does is when it completes, it does all of this one more time. And it started creating problems as far as this video is concerned. I was future checking something, and I was getting all sorts of crazy errors because when you come into this spot again, and when this fires, when it's complete, it comes back here and feeds off of this pin with, well, what do you want me to do next, right? And the main thing was down here in this material instance, as I had it as a sequence. When it fell off of here, after it returned from here, when it found the existing material instance and deleted it, we called this function again. Of course, it starts back off at pin 0, and it goes and it's doing its thing, and it passes, and everything's fine. But then it comes back and it says, well, now I'm going to finish off from here. Well, finishing off from here, I'm going to go to my next pin. So instead of coming, and now it finishes off with pin 2, and it comes back into pin 2, and it recreates something, and it resaves things, which in the future of what I was trying to do was creating all sorts of strange buggy errors, and I tracked it down to that. So we're going to get rid of this, and we're going to clean that up. And so what I would like to do is we're going to clean it up in the sense that we're going through and setting and doing a lot of work, and then all of a sudden we find out that the material instance exists, and getting rid of it, right? So why did I do all of this stuff when that file already existed? So let's move that up to be a higher priority item in our search. So once we start, let's check to see if these both of these two files exist. If they do, let's get rid of them and then get into our code. So that'll be a little bit of a improvement there, and so that we're not doing things that we don't have to, and then have to redo anyways. So let me just get a little bit of space here to start. So to do that, I'm going to need to, or want to, get these file namings as a separate event that I want to call. So I'm going to create a custom event. And since I'm just swinging by the fly here, let's call it set file path names. Okay, and I'm going to grab these and this. I'm going to copy those and I'm going to paste that up here. Okay, so that's one of them getting set. Move that over a bit. And so to come out of that, I can now come off of this pin and just call our set file path names. Right, and I'll plug that into there. And I should be able to delete all of this. And we're still good. The next one would be to have it also set the material instance up, file names. So let's do that at the same time. So let's grab all of these and these two items. We'll copy those. And I'm going to just paste it over here somewhere. We'll move it over. Maybe somewhere there. I know everything's in the way, but we'll get there. Move that up here. So let me just grab these two and we'll pull them up like that. That's not too bad, I suppose. Okay, so now we've got our render target and our material instance file names and paths all set from there. And so that gets set right off the top. So I don't need to do this part here anymore because we already had checked that the static mesh was valid, so we don't need to check that again. So we're cleaned that up. So that's good. I say so too many times. Sorry about that. I'm just going to pause here so I don't get too messed up, and I'll be right back. Okay, so now let's, like we said before, let's now at the start of our create icon, item icon, this we'll still want to do. We want to still make sure that we have a valid static mesh to start. We will set our path names, and well, actually, let's get this into a sequence because it's a real sequential process here, so we might as well use a sequence, right? Like we did down below, and ultimately maybe we'll end up just tying both of these together, but we'll see what happens with this because I'm just fixing it as we go here. I'm just gonna drag this maybe there. Okay, so we set the file paths. The next thing that we should do is see if the files exist. So we don't need to capture this scene or nothing yet. Let's just deal with if the file exists. So let's start with this render target. We'll take those two spots. We'll take the branch. We'll also take the delete asset part of it. And let's come down. So we're going to copy that and we'll paste that over here. And I'm going to come off of this pin and we're going to do that. here. So that's a nice little step. We set the paths, we see if it exists, and if it does, we get rid of it. If it doesn't, well, we're gonna go to the next pin, which we're going to do. I'm going to actually break this link here because we're going into our sequence now. So we're going to do that, and then we might as well see if the material instance exists at this point too. So let's add our pin, and let's do the same thing. So this material instance, does it exist? Yes or no? If it does, delete it. And that's what we want. So we're going to copy those. We're going to paste that up here. We'll just match that up. Grab that and drag those down here. And clean that up. And let's do that off our second step here. Okay. That's pretty good, eh? Let's clean that. There we go. I don't like all these things, but we'll move that around once we get a little bit closer. I'm gonna move this down out of my way. Okay, so now we've dealt with any existing files. They're gone. The next thing that we need to do is to capture our scene. So let's do that. Let's grab our capture actor and our capture scene for our component. And we'll copy those and we'll paste that down here. Right, we'll add another pin to our sequence. We'll come off and dump that into there. Let's move these over a bit. I guess I'm gonna grr. All right. Oh yeah, my compulsions will not let me not have those straightened out. We'll eventually get them all nicely placed how we want them. Okay, so we did this part, right? I'm gonna get rid of that. We did this test and we did this test. We don't want to call that again. We don't need this branch. So we've now captured our scene. Yeah, I don't know where best to put those. We captured our scene, and now we need to create our static texture. So that is, I'm going to just move all of this for now. I'm just going to drag that down here. And I'm going to add another pin. And we're going to come down here and we're going to stuff that in there. Move this down to here. Slide those off a bit more. Okay. And this was using that same pin off of this capture scene component. Okay, so I'm just gonna cheat that one over a bit. I don't want to create another variable for it. And yeah, that's pretty good. So now we've created our static texture, so that's written into the directory. We've got our texture targets edit and we saved it, and now we've called our next material create the material instance portion. So I'm going to leave that as a separate function at the moment because we're changing a lot of stuff here. Let's move this into place. Looking at the material instance, we've already done this test on the material instance, if it exists. So I'm going to get rid of that. I'm going to get rid of this part where it gets deleted. I'm going to get rid of where it calls itself again, because that was a problem. And I'm going to get rid of this branch. Okay. So now we've got, so leading from the last function, custom event, we've created our static texture. And at the end of it, we called create our new material instance, which is here. So if I call off to pin 1, we're going to grab those asset tools, and we're going to duplicate the instance or our asset of our post-process icon material instance that we've created originally. And we're going to create our material instance off of that. Okay. And then the next step, I guess, pretty much stays the same. And that's where we cast it to a material instance. Let me just move this pin up to here. And we can remove that pin for now. We casted it to a material instance because this is duplicated as an object. And so it doesn't know what it is. It's just a file. And then we cast it to get a material instance constant out of it so that we can then set the texture parameter. And then we can save it. Now this checkbox here, only if it's dirty. In my video future, I was finding that while this is a performance gain because it's a check, there were so many other things going on because of the double calling of my function. I'm not sure if that was the creation of it, but this is a pretty inexpensive operation in our instance here. So I'm going to uncheck that and say, you know what, clean or not, save that thing. I'm going to set that up here too. Just to force the operation to happen and to refresh. We can always come back and double check those again, but right now I'm going to change those to be that. Okay. Okay, so we did a lot of changes here. Let's line some of these up. So again, we started with loading our mesh. Then we've set our path names. We've now refigured our create item into a sequence where we're if we have a valid mesh, we're setting our path names. We're checking to see if files exist, and if they do, we get rid of them. If they don't, well, then just carry on, right? We're going to carry on through our sequence. We capture our scene. We create our render target, our static texture, and then we duplicate our material instance and we apply the texture target to the parameter and we save it. So let's compile that and save. No errors, which is nice. We come back into here and I'm going to go into our browser. I'll leave those there, I guess, and let's just pick a different, I think there's a couch here. So let's load that and we can adjust our view here a little bit, say something like that, and say that we're happy with that, and we'll create our item icon. And if all went well, it should be here, and there it is. And that's basically it. So now you can, for all of your different assets that you may have, you know, there's all sorts of different ways. Obviously, you could create a master blueprint, or a file name tagged selection so that they show up easier. And have all sorts of different items. All your items would be obviously available for you. We can get this cube, we could load it in, adjust our little view of it here, and we can create your icons, and you'll have your icons available to insert into your buttons for your UI, and off you go. So I'm going to pause this here. It might be a second video or third or whatever is in the series to show how these add in to a UI button, and so that it's kind of a wrapped up little project. I hope that this was something that was of interest for you. Obviously, if you lasted this long, maybe it was. And I hope I think this has a lot of value, and because I saw a lot of different products on the marketplace that are trying to sell something that does more or less the same thing, maybe with a little bit more polish. But this was pretty straightforward as far as I was concerned. The only other thing that you might want to you could do is where I call this other function at the end. Really, it could just be coming off another pin and get into these final two steps. But for this, I'm going to leave this at this point here. So thank you very much for all of your attention. Any questions or comments, I'd be happy to do my best to answer them, or at least direct you to some of the resources that I've used in my past to come to this. But other than that, have yourself a great day. Thanks a lot. Okay, so let's just wrap this up by quickly just reusing the material instance for the icon in a UI button. So let's go into our content browser. You can store this in any folder that you want in your project. We'll create a user widget. I'm going to call it my widget BP. We'll call it button. There's more complete videos of these kinds of things on YouTube all over the place, so I'll let you find those. And you'll have a great time doing that. So let's start with our button. Let's add a canvas panel to our button. Let's add to our canvas panel. Let's add a border. Let's see, is it in here? Yeah. Add a border to it. To our border, let's add a button. Let's get that inside our border. And then in our button, let's add an image. Okay. Let's change our view here from filling screen to desired. Okay. Obviously, you don't want it to look like this. So let's set the size of our border to, I don't know, let's say 70 by 70 or something like that. So a little square button. There's so many different settings here. It gets kind of crazy. So let's start with our image, and we'll build up from there, I think. So let's set our image. So for our, that sits on our button. So on our image, this is where we set our brush image. Here we can go to our MII, material instance, and let's pick our chair. So there's our chair. And let's set it to be 64 by 64 for our 70 by 70 box. That seems funny. Why did I do that? Probably because of all the padding, maybe. So let's get rid of our padding. And then let's look at our button. Our button padding. Let's look at our border. So many choices. Let's get rid of our. So this is the padding on the border slot. It's looking better. So now we've got our button, our border, our buttons filling our border, and there's our image. Still a little squashed here. Okay, so I don't know what I selected. I did change the screen size to be for a 27-inch monitor, and all of a sudden then the image that was sitting on the button snapped to fill the button. I don't know whether it just needed a refresh on that or not. But if let's say we add a 5-point padding for on the button around our image, so that looks fine. And then obviously we can then go into our image. We want to make sure our image opacity, the alpha, is set to 1 because we want to see it, because changing that value obviously fades out our image. So we'll set that back to 1. And then our button image, that's something that you might want to change to see more of your background border color. So we could maybe just have a little bit of that. And if I look at my border, this is where you'd probably change your opacity so that you have, a little bit transparent to our item. And give it that's in the wrong color. Just saying. Let's revert that. That's in the content. That's the wrong one. We want the canvas panel slot. Let's start with the canvas panel. Wow, I'm horrible at this. No, that should be fine. The border, the brush on the border, the tint of the border. Oh yeah, I was in content. In the tint of the border, we want to change its opacity to maybe 0.1. So we have some background to it, and something if you want whatever kind of suits your UI style. And there we have it. And then what you'll probably end up doing in your script is having this image as a variable. You can name it obviously whatever you want it to be. This was our button image, something like that. And then you can call that in your blueprint to have it update that. You have to call the button or the image and then get its brush to be able to set the brush. And yeah, and then you can just change those to whatever item that you wanted for your button image, and you can loop through them and do whatever you're going to do. But that's basically how it works, and that's what we're creating the material instances for. And like I said, we've made them for 64 by or 256 by 256. I don't know what happens if I make this bigger. I guess it's not sizing up to the other content. One of these, because we set our size here. If I set that size to content, and then now we get our bigger button. Like I'm zoomed in 11 times here. I zoom that back to what it would be on screen. That'd be the size of your button, and you're good to go. Thanks so much, and have a great day, everyone.